All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Family Partnership Council meeting of 2023. We have 2 left this year, which is crazy. And then that completes our term for a lot of us. So I do want to say I apologize you don't have a little bit more time to prepare for these meetings. Believe it or not, we start working on the agenda in January. And that is how long it takes to get everything kind of moved through and approved before it can hit your inboxes. So I hope you did have a little bit of time to look over what we're going to go over today. But just kind of want to remind folks too, like you can always email me between meetings. You know, if you're kind of one of these people that needs to like process something and you have an idea or something comes to you, we've got 3 great presentations today. And it may be hard kind of on the spot to think about feedback or questions. And so just know that all of these folks are available for us if we have kind of thoughts or conversations that we want to continue in between meetings. So it doesn't have to be within these 2 hours, and then you don't have to like wait until June to have another opinion. That's what I'm here for. So you send me stuff and I'm happy to kind of get it through and get thoughts and questions answered for you guys. So with all members joining, I have my little script here. With all members joining us remotely, please ensure that your video is streaming and that you are visible during the duration of the meeting. Your microphone should be muted when you're not speaking. However, all discussions must be broadcast to the public, so make certain your mic is unmuted when speaking. For those members joining in person at the Kentucky Department of Education, that is no longer something we do. Those silence any devices that could disturb the audio within the room. Dr. Glass, is there anything you would like to add to that?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay. Leslie, I'm going to hand it over to you for roll call. I think you're muted.
But of course, thank you.
Leslie, I just went over muted.
Grace Absher. Elizabeth Ashley Bruce.
Present.
Natasha Lucas. Jennifer Travers Skidmore.
Present.
Mona Smith.
Present.
Julia Staten.
Here.
Brooke Gill.
Here.
Melissa Goins. Tom Haggard.
Here.
Rhonda Logston.
Here.
Lauren Mitchell.
Here.
Kathy Smiley.
Present.
If everybody's got a copy of the minutes, Megan sent them when she sent the invites out, and I would like for you to review them and we'll get an approval on the minutes, the draft minutes from the September meeting. Yeah. Does anybody have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Great. Thank you. Motion carries. Brooke, I'm going to hand it back to you.
All right. First up is Commissioner Glass.
Thanks, Brooke. Hi, everybody. Great to see all of you. Thanks for the time. I have a couple of things to update you on. First, I'll just talk a little bit about the legislative session that we are in right now and sort of where things stand on that and what the process looks like, some key bills that we're paying attention to. And then talk a little bit about the United We Learn effort that I know Karen Dodd is on a little later to give you an update on some of the work that's happening with the United We Learn Council and what all that looks like. So I won't steal her thunder too much, but I always want to take every opportunity I can to talk about United We Learn and the efforts underway around that. Starting with the legislative session, this is technically a short legislative session. But what they do is they sort of go for a few days and then break and go for a few days and break. So it really spreads out this whole period of time. Where they are in the process is really this week and next week are the 2 weeks when anything of significance is going to take place. And they have to do that because they have to send bills to the governor, and then they have to come back after the governor has a chance to review them. And anything that the governor vetoes, the legislature needs a few days to override the vetoes if they choose to do so. So that's sort of where things are. We should see great clarity within by the end of next week. We'll have great clarity around what's actually going to pass. Then we'll be in a 2-week period where the governor will have all of those bills, and he can decide to sign them, veto them, or allow them to become law without his signature. So all 3 of those will be paths. And when it comes, anything that the governor vetoes, of course, with the dynamics in the General Assembly right now, the legislature only needs a simple majority to override the veto. So it's quite likely that anything Governor Beshear vetoes is going to be overridden. Nevertheless, it is another step in the process. If the legislature chooses to act in that interim period, once they come back, then they would be sending things to the governor that he potentially could veto that they would not have the opportunity to override. So that's all has to do with timing. Anything that they want to have the chance to override, they need to get done in the next couple of weeks. At the outset of this session, we were really hopeful that we'd see something significant done around supporting the educator workforce. Now showing the increased turnover and attrition in our educators. We passed 20% in terms of the number of teachers that are turning over every year. And so that's the number that are leaving their jobs at the end of every year. That's a high number. The sort of national benchmark around that's 15, 16%. So we're 4 or 5 percentage points higher than that. When you think about the whole state workforce, that's going to equate to a couple of thousand more job openings than otherwise we would have. So when you see that kind of increase in the number of openings, and then we look at, we also keep track of who's entering the teaching profession. That's held fairly steady in Kentucky over the past several years, which is a good thing. And a lot of that's been attributed or is attributable to work that Western Kentucky University and the University of Kentucky have done to increase the number of candidates that they're serving. And we've seen an increase in the number of alternatively certified candidates that are coming in. So those 3 things together help stabilizing our candidates in the state, whereas around the country, we've seen kind of a 30% on average decline in the number of people entering the teaching profession. So far, knock on wood, we haven't seen that precipitous drop off in the number of people entering the teaching profession, but we are seeing quite a surge in the number of people that are leaving the profession. And so how districts are solving that gap or that distance between the number of candidates they have and the increased number of openings that are out there is they're relying on younger teachers more and more. So we're seeing new teachers being used. We're seeing people pulled in from retirement also and filling gaps. And so both of those groups are great. We need them both, but they also are the 2 most likely groups to then leave. So we know teachers that are early on in their career and teachers that have already retired, can walk off anytime they want. So it's sort of setting us up to continue this churn in terms of the attrition. So those are concerning statistics. We've also seen a dramatic increase in the number of emergency certifications in the state. So about a 200% increase in the last 5 years. And so what that means is that we're taking someone who wouldn't normally be qualified to teach in the field that they are being placed in. We're giving them an emergency certification and putting them in that role. So it's someone with a lesser qualification than we would have allowed in the past. I want to say that we are, grateful and appreciative of anybody who teaches, and including our emergency certified teachers. But it should be a a red warning light for us to see a 200% increase in the number of emergency certifications in the state. That's a significant sign of a problem that we have with the workforce. So all of that to say that we really hope that we would see some movement in this session to support and stabilize the teaching profession. That doesn't seem to be happening. Representative Tipton did introduce a bill that would provide some supports around the teaching profession, but it really is pretty limited. I think Representative Tipton, he has said that it's very limited too, and some of that relates to that this is not a full budget session, so there's not a great appetite for sort of cracking open the whole budget and doing something large scale. But it's a really sort of limited scale bill, and it doesn't include appropriations to really have much of an impact. So I think we should have really modest expectations for what that bill is ultimately going to do. And at least from the perspective of the department, we've been disappointed that it hasn't been a higher priority issue with the legislature. The education issues that are priorities with the legislature seem to be issues of parent rights, and there are various forms of those bills that are being considered in the legislature right now. Some of them, I would say, actually don't add to parent rights. They take away some parent rights, particularly if you're the parent of an LGBTQ student or a trans student. And specifically, you have fewer rights under these bills. And there is a great deal of energy and attention around these sort of cultural issues and anti-LGBTQ issues beyond just education, but that seems to be something that the legislature is very interested in doing something about. Of course, we've been clear, and I've been clear from the Department of Education standpoint, that we are supportive of all of our students and families and want to make sure that public schools are a place that every student can attend and be welcomed and feel safe. And so, we remain steadfast. I remain steadfast on that point. But we'll ultimately see what version of these things come to pass. Again, there are multiple sort of competing versions of these out there, so we'll see which form of it actually gets passed. But I think you can expect some kind of bill, at least labeled as a parent right bill in some form, but you need to look under the hood and see what it actually does. There are some elements of it that we think are good. So, for example, Senate Bill 150, that's Senator Wise's bill, it includes notices to parents anytime that health or mental health or counseling sessions are conducted. We think that's a good thing. And so most districts are doing that anyway, but it's a good practice. That bill contains specific carve-outs that allow for conversations around the teaching and contributions of LGBTQ people in the curriculum. And LGBTQ people exist in our society, and they've made incredible contributions to humanity. So we should be talking about them. But again, I think that's an example of something with a label of parent rights that really is doing some different things underneath it. So we'll have to pay attention to that and see what actually ends up happening. Related to that, there are some, related to the educator workforce, there's bills that would expand licensure flexibility. So that would allow people that are on emergency certifications or that are on alternative certifications that are in the process of transitioning into a regular teaching license to have more time. So that we're supportive of those bills and think that they are moving in the right direction. We don't support ever lowering the standard on what it means to be a teacher, but different pathways and flexibility, I think, is something that we could all get behind. There's a student discipline bill moving that would look at giving districts some more options when it comes to disruptive students and alternative placements for those students that we're paying attention to as well. Related to the Department of Education and the commissioner's role, there's a bill that has passed out of the Senate now, and it's also under consideration in the House that would change the appointment process for state board members. So right now the governor appoints those, and then they're confirmed by the Senate. The Senate version of that bill would create an appointment committee that sort of vets people and then gives a list of names to the governor. The governor would then choose from that list of names, and then they would be confirmed by the Senate. So it's kind of a two-step process as opposed to gubernatorial appointment and Senate confirmation. It's a committee, and then the governor, and then confirmation of state board members. So it's quite complex. We have some appointing boards and other situations, and they're kind of unwieldy because people don't usually want to serve on them because you're a step away from actually having the authority to do something. So it's we'll see what ultimately happens with that. The House version doesn't include that, but it does include making the commissioners' positions on my job and any future commissioners subject to Senate confirmation, and that's a new wrinkle in Kentucky. So, Kara established the Commissioner of Education as a professional position that was supposed to be separated from sort of bowing to political influence, either from the legislature or the governor or from anybody else. It established the Department of Education and the commissioner as independent entities, and so this would make that the commissioner subject to Senate confirmation. So certainly future commissioners will need to think about the Senate and the politics in the Senate to survive confirmation. The language that's in it right now talks about upon appointment or reappointment. So more immediately, my contract, I have a contract through September of 2024 that I intend to work to finish. And it's been wonderful serving in this role in my home state, but we'll see what happens after that. So that's a bill that's underway. Some things that relate to state workers. Some of you may have seen there was a 6% increase that was paid to state workers. That will help us at KDE and other state agencies attract and retain people. So we're appreciative and grateful for that. And I think that's a pretty good rundown of sort of some legislative matters that are out there, and we can have a conversation on different perspectives or thoughts around some of these bills that are out there. But we'll see what happens. Really, there'll be a lot more clarity in the next 2 weeks about what final versions of things are going to ultimately come to pass. Shifting gears to United We Learn. Some of you may have heard me talk about it in the past, but and Karen again is going to go into more depth and detail on that. But United We Learn is a statewide vision for the future direction of education in the state. It was based on extensive listening effort of Kentuckians. We've sort of distilled it down to 3 big ideas. One of those is around, and this is what Kentuckians told us they wanted for the future of education in the state and for their students. One is they wanted better, more meaningful, deeper, richer, more authentic, more engaging learning experiences for students. So one of the ways that we're bringing that about in Kentucky right now is our Deeper Learning Network that we've used some of our COVID relief dollars to establish in about 160 plus districts in the state. So there's a network around deeper learning experiences that's operating right now. And we have brought in a group called PBL Works, problem-based, project-based learning. So it's this idea that instead of just memorization or repetitive task, you should take a content or some concept that you need to learn and then apply it in some real situation. So those are problem or project-based experiences. So we brought them in, and ultimately we hope to reach about 1/3 of the teachers in the state of Kentucky, which is a big lift to try and get trained in problem and project-based approaches. So that's one way, or a couple of ways that we really trying to bring about the vision and United We Learn to life around deeper learning. The second big idea in United We Learn relates to assessment and accountability innovation. So our people in Kentucky really told us that the system of tests and rankings that we have in Kentucky doesn't reflect very well the kinds of skills that they felt students needed to be successful. And in some ways, they were barriers to the kinds of shifts in learning that they were asking for with that deeper learning experiences. So they've asked us to look at our system of tests and accountability systems, and see if we can come up with some ways to get at better measures than we had before, and also to value the perspectives of people in local communities when it comes to accountability. So nobody's saying do away with tests or do away with accountability. Well, some people may say that, but that's not what they told us. It's really around how do we make these systems better? and richer in what they're measuring and more reflective of local community values and what people say they want out of their community schools. So we're working on that in some a couple of significant ways. I'll let Karen tell more about that. And then the final one is around connection and collaboration with people in our community. So and this probably relates most closely to the work that you're doing here as our Family Partnership Council. There was a real sense that too often decisions around education are made by people in positions of power, and people in our communities, including our parents, our students, our teachers, and people that don't have a direct connection to school are often left out of decisions. And so we needed to work on making sure that people were brought in to those decisions. And so that was a value that was lifted up. One of the ways that we're trying to do that with at the Department of Education is through the United We Learn Council. So we've developed this really broad group of Kentuckians to give us feedback on how things are going related to those three big ideas I just laid out, and tell us what we can do to bring these into reality and to hold the department and me accountable for delivering on what Kentuckians asked us to do. So I'm excited about that. Again, I want to steal everything Karen's going to talk about. I probably already have. She's probably fuming at me. It's a good thing she's on mute. So she's probably, there's some curse words that she's issuing toward me, I bet. But I'm kidding, of course. Karen is much too professional to ever do anything like that, at least out loud. So I'll stop there, Brooke, and see if there's any questions or feedback or just comments that folks have about anything I've said, or really anything else that you want to talk about. This is an opportunity for you to advise me, and I'll just close by saying thank you. I know that all of you are super busy, and we're grateful for any time that you can give us to help us make schools better in Kentucky.
Thank you so much. That was a great update. We only had one question come in through the chat box, but I'm sure there's others. To get us started for Rhonda, are those emergency certifications all in special ed?
They're not. They're really across the board. We have seen an increase in emergency certifications in those high need areas like special education and math and science, those traditional shortage areas, but we are now seeing shortage areas in things like early childhood education, language education, physical education, social studies education. So, I mean, areas where there used to be a glut of applicants, now we're seeing shortages pop up in those areas. So it's showing up across the board. But I would say that in those areas like special ed and math and science that traditionally have been shortage areas, those are even tighter than they were before. But now those shortages have really expanded out much more broadly.
All right, members, this is your time. Questions or comments? Yeah.
Well, y'all know me. I can't be quiet. What is the Senate bill that's in regards to the discipline? And does it in that Senate bill, is it, I guess, because, well, you know where I always go first is in regards to special education, and I just want to make sure, especially with all of the guidance that's been issued through the U.S. Department of Education in regards to, the discrimination related for children with disabilities. Are there some things to be aware of in that Senate bill you mentioned about discipline that might sort of go against that? And
yeah, let me put something in the chat here. There's an AP story on the student discipline measure, and this is a few days old, so it's this is talking about the House version. And I think yesterday, let me check on that. I think yesterday the Senate passed it as well. So there have been changes to it, but I'll let you read through what's in the House version, and then I'm sorry I'm not prepared at this moment to talk about what's happened with the Senate version. I need to catch up on that. But just take a look in the chat there around the bill. Republican Timmy Truitt is the sponsor. So this article from the Associated Press goes into some detail on what would be done. I will say that when it comes to a student with an IEP or a special education student, that student has rights under federal law that this state law is not going to usurp. So if a student has a behavioral issue or there's a discipline issue that's related, it's a manifestation of a disability, you still can't punish that student related to the disability. So that would still stand. But I'm sorry, I need to do some more work on what's most recently happened with this student discipline bill.
There was one more question in there. Julia, did you feel like it got answered or? I'm gonna unmute.
Who will be defining disruptive behavior? Yeah, Julia, and I appreciate the previous question too, and I wish I had read more up on the detail on this. Let me do this. I'm going to ask our legislative liaison, Brian Perry, to work just a summary on this bill. And Brooke, if I send that to you, can you distribute it to the membership of the committee or of the group here, so they can get really somebody who's spent a lot of time focused on this. So, and I again apologize, but let me do some research on that and let you know the precise elements that are in it. I was just checking on this on the bill to see what had happened with it in the Senate yesterday.
And then I'm not sure. Okay, go ahead, Lauren.
KASC puts out a very comprehensive and easily understood legislative news, and you can access that through their website. And if you're a member, it comes to you in your email. But that keeps track of a lot. I don't want to say all, but a lot of the bills that pertain to education. And Lynn Sloan is their attorney there, and she does a really good job of breaking them down and explaining each one, if you're interested in that.
Great. So I think that's a great resource. You still have several other of the K groups, as we call them. So KASC is a great resource for families. You got the School Boards Association, the Kentucky Education Association, the School Administrators Association. A lot of them have positions on these bills as well. Of course, it reflects the different groups that they represent. But that all of them are good places to sort of find out what's in the bills and or what a perspective on them is. I appreciate the advice on looking under the hood of the legislation. Yeah, you got to be careful. Sometimes the titles don't match what is really happening. So, and we've got a few, and this happens toward the end of the session too. They introduce what's called these shell bills, which are just a number, and there's nothing contained in it. And so they do that so that if late in the session they want to introduce something new, they still can after the filing deadline has passed. So we often have to be paying attention as these shell bills move forward. We saw a significant one around a tax policy that was moving yesterday.
If I could speak, I am a parent in a large blended family. I've mentioned this on previous calls. My husband and I combined, we have 8 children of wide range age ranges. And when you have children, any of us that have children, they come into this world and you hope that everything just goes very linear for them in their lives, right? They're born a certain gender and you hope that everything just goes in a very linear manner for them. But as we all know, things don't happen that way, right? And, a couple of my children, as they've reached their adolescent years, have begun to identify as gender fluid. And they've kind of weaved into that and weaved out of that, and you don't know what to expect as they enter adolescence, and then they exit out of that, and you just try to be patient, and you try to let them explore those pieces of themselves and those pieces of their lives, and have patience around that. And so, Dr. Glass, as you were expressing, or as you were explaining the pieces around the transgender and the LGBTQ pieces that may come into some of this legislation, that struck a chord of fear for me, not only for my own children, but other people's children that may be going through those phases and those changes that may or may not be permanent for them, and you want to protect those children as they explore those phases of their lives. And protect them just as much as you might protect any other child that may not be in a traditional or linear path in their lives. So it's important to look under the hood and see exactly what those legislative pieces say, and are all children being protected, and are all rights being protected.
Yeah, I appreciate so much your statements and agree completely. I really think it's, as a public school system, it's our job to make sure that we're welcoming and safe place for everybody. And some of our students require some sort of different care than others. And that's true with LGBTQ students, who we know have an increased risk of suicide, self-harm, harm from others. And so we've felt like it's a responsibility that we have at the Department of Education to provide guidance around that, and what are evidence-based best practices for educators and supporting students. So we've put that out there. That guidance, of course, has become a lightning rod in this whole discussion. Some feel like we shouldn't have a perspective on it, but I would say, look, it's guidance, and guidance from the Department of Education that's non-regulatory is just guidance. So it doesn't direct anybody to do anything. It just says, look, we've learned some lessons. Because schools have been supporting these students, and here are some best practices that you want to consider. So we don't require things, we're not regulating anything, but we are providing what the evidence says is that some of the things educators can consider in supporting students, particularly students that are at risk. So that's where we're coming from. But I stand behind it then and do today. And think it's the right thing to do. So again, I just want to make sure that our public schools are welcoming for every kid. We want every kid to be successful.
Thank you.
Anything else? I wondered if you'd give a quick update on the House Bill 50. If I'm understanding, it didn't go to vote today. That was the one I think many of us were kind of watching, because it created partisan.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
In school boards.
Yeah. So I've been tracking this today too, and it looks like that's not moving. So that's at least in my professional judgment, that's good news. I think we've got far too much partisanship in everything anyway. School boards and most local elections have intentionally, historically, been nonpartisan roles, because you want people from different perspectives to come together and work on things that are in the best interest of the community, regardless of what their backgrounds are. And so putting a partisan label on to those races definitely injects party politics into them. And at least in my professional judgment, that's not a good thing. I've had the benefit of working with Republicans, Democrats, and independents in different boards that I've had over the years, and I valued all of their perspectives. And you really needed all of their perspectives, because you've got all those perspectives in your communities. And some of the best outcomes that I've ever professionally worked through came from people with different perspectives and ideas, finding a way through something and listening to each other. So I think that's what we want. That's That's what nonpartisan elections typically bring, and so I was relieved to see that that was not moving. But again, there's still a couple of weeks left in the session here. Who knows what will eventually end up happening? I think excuse me, if it came to pass, there are some excuse me legal and legal questions about it that will have to be resolved. Some folks have raised whether or not it's constitutional to do that in Kentucky. So I think that ultimately would be a question for the courts to determine if it indeed passed. But from a practical standpoint, I think what it would mean is in much of rural Kentucky, you will never have a Democrat elected to a school board, and in Jefferson County and in some other urban parts of Kentucky, you will never have a Republican elected to a school board. And at least in my professional judgment, neither one of those are good outcomes. You would just want good people serving on your school boards, and at least that's my professional opinion. Maybe more than just professional.
Great. Thank you for that update. I know that's something close to the work that we're tasked with. So I just wanted everybody to have an update on that. Any more questions for Dr. Glass or comments, stories?
I was looking through just quickly the bills that are up right now, and Senate Bill 31 is slightly disturbing about weapons, concealed deadly weapons in school. Can you speak to that? I'm not even sure I understand what they're asking for.
I'm bringing it up now. I think it relates to higher education. Let me check it. There's been several versions of this one. Oh, this is Senator Southworth's bill. It has not, looks like it was assigned to the Education Committee in February, but it has not moved. So I don't think that one is going to come out, or I don't think that one's going to move. There is a bill related to concealed weapons on college campuses that is moving and getting some attention. The higher education community has come out in opposition to that, really out of concerns that it extends to like athletic events and things like that. And I think you got really competing visions of what safety looks like. So when you go into a football game at Commonwealth Stadium now, there are metal detectors and screenings to make sure that people aren't bringing weapons in. So this would change that, and potentially everybody's armed. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. I saw President Thompson from the Council on Post-Secondary Education issued a statement in opposition to that yesterday, and President Capilouto at UK has, and then I think the higher education community is largely standing together, saying that they don't think this is a good idea. But on this one with Senate Bill 31, I don't see it moving.
One more. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that was it.
The other one that we've actually been talking about in our own council is students being a voting member or even just a member of councils. We keep coming up against how would you choose, because especially I serve on a middle school council, it would be extremely difficult to choose, like, would you exempt all 6th and 7th graders and just choose from the 8th? Or we would need a lot of guidance and or examples of how that would actually work. And I didn't know what your take on that was.
Yeah, I think that's Representative Timoney and Bojanowski's bill. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's the one you're talking about. And it actually extends it out. It's not just councils, but it's on school boards as well. So I think you're right. The devil's going to be in the details on how you do that. And if the law isn't clear on what it looks like, then our options are to if the law doesn't specify the route, then what the department does is then again from a guidance perspective, we'll put out some ideas and here's how we think you should do it. But that's non-regulatory. You don't have to. But it's like we'll research different states around the country or different communities that are using student members, which a lot of them do. And even, in fact, the State Board of Education has student members that are on it. And so we have a whole process of application and vetting and selection that we do to determine the student member. So we would put out some ideas that councils and school boards could use in the selection of the student member. Another route is that the State Board of Education could run regulations that really define, here's exactly how you do it. I don't know that they would do that. The law that's out right now doesn't clearly have language that says that the state board should do that. So probably what we would do is just put out some guidance and say, here's what we think the best path is, and then leave it to the local level to determine that. But I'm not sure if that bill's, do you know the bill number on that? I can't remember.
I could look it up. It wouldn't take me.
Yeah, I'll ask Brian Perry to provide some updates on that one too. And I'll have him send just a paragraph on where that is, and we can have Brooke distribute that to everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, well, not hearing any more feedback and discussion. I don't want to monopolize any more of the meeting than we already have. Thanks, everybody, for the questions and conversations. I really am grateful for the time to listen to the things that you're thinking about. Brooke, anything else that you need from me?
I think we're good. Karen's gonna take us into United We Learn.
Okay, Karen is ably suited to do that, so we'll turn things over to her. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thank you.
All right, you ready for me to start?
Ready.
Okay. Let's see, can we go to my next slide? I'm not seeing them move.
It clicked over to the purpose slide on my end.
Okay. Okay.
I
It may just be me. I have it pulled up on. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, it's not clicking for us, so we can either all forward our own slides, but probably for folks that are tuning in that don't have access, maybe kind of like might be something with your view or actions.
Yeah, Megan, you may need to reshare. Okay, well, I can start talking about it. So the purpose, we do have a purpose slide that she'll be pulling up for us, but basically in a nutshell, we put together the United We Learn Council because of all the work that was previously done around listening to Kentuckians. And so we want to move forward the work from everything that we've heard through the listening tours and then the coalition that was put together to make sense of all the data that was collected through those listening tours. So a report was put out around that was called the United We Learn report. And then the council was developed to take the ideas that came from there and move forward and make it a reality, to truly change what we're doing in education. And the council is made up of 75 members, so it is not a small group. We have 75 members, all different kinds of folks. We've got educators, we've got students, we have education partners, community members, business leaders, all a part of this. We have Audrey Gilbert, who is our interim chair, and Audrey is a student. So we're just really excited of how this is all unfolding for us. We have 3 standing committees. So out of United We Learn, we came up with these 3 big ideas of vibrant learning experiences, accelerating innovation, especially around accountability and assessments, and a bold new future, specifically as it pertains to working in and through communities. So we turned each of those big ideas into a standing committee. And so what I'm going to share with you today is the ongoing work of each of those committees. They have been meeting, each of them have been meeting on a monthly basis. A couple of them have even met together to kind of coordinate their work. But this week, all three of them met. So I have the latest update for you. But before I go into that, just know that each of them came up with a charter so that they can really look at what's being expected through the grant. All of this work is being funded through a grant. And so what is it that's expected in there? What is it that Kentuckians said they want that's in that United We Learn report? And so that's kind of where they are right now. Now, keep in mind that this all just started back in November. That was the first convening that we had, the first time all of these members came together, the first time they broke out into committees. And so they are still gelling as committee members. So there's not a lot of deep work just yet. This is a 4-year grant, so we've got 4 years to really understand what it is we need to do and then set a plan in place to do that. So the Vibrant Learning Experiences Team Committee met on March 6th, so that was just Monday. We have Dustin Dunning, who is a student again, and he is the chair of that committee. He talked about, yeah.
Karen, I don't mean to interrupt, but what slide are you supposed to be, am I supposed to be on with you?
Next slide.
Next
two
one.
more. Two more.
Two more? Like this one?
Vibrant Learning
Okay.
Experiences. Mhm. There you go. So, so one of the things that we're going to do in April, our next convening is in April, and we are going to be looking to nominate a new chair and vice chair of the overall council. We put Audrey Gilbert in place because we needed a chair, and the members didn't know each other yet. Right, they've just been getting to know each other since November. So we didn't think having an election that very first meeting would be very fruitful. Audrey Gilbert has been a member of our Student Advisory Council. She is an intern at the department, so she's very knowledgeable about everything that we're doing. And we felt that having a student lead was also unique and just pretty cool. So she agreed to be the chair, but she is going off to college in the fall and doesn't feel that she'll be able to commit the time that it takes to be a chair. So we have asked each of the committees to nominate folks from their own committees, and then we'll work with them to basically come up with a campaign, not really, but we'll be nominating, we'll have those nominations out in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll let everybody know, kind of give a little bit of background, a little bio of everybody who is interested in possibly being either the chair or vice chair. And then before our April convening, all members will vote on a chair and vice chair, and we'll announce that in April at the convening. So as far as Vibrant Learning Experiences go, Justin went ahead and explained that process to all of the members. And then they also talked about site visits. So one of the things that Vibrant Learning Experiences is really interested in is what is happening in Kentucky today that we would consider vibrant learning. So you heard Dr. Glass talk about deeper learning and project-based learning. Those are, just a couple of the things that we know are going on. Some of that work is in conjunction with the Kentucky Department of Education, but we're very interested to hear what else is out there. So this committee decided that they want to go into the schools and see what schools are considering to be vibrant learning experiences, and how we can then take that and broaden it throughout Kentucky. Now, they were also interested in what a vibrant learning experience or an innovative practice is throughout the nation. So they brought in Sarah McCain, who was with the Canopy Project, and she shared with the committee a database of projects or practices that are going on in schools across the U.S. And so she was able to share with us how you get into that database and how you can filter on it. I think there was one Kentucky school that was represented in that database, but probably because we just didn't know about it. So I think they're interested in letting others know that that database is out there and getting more of Kentucky's practices in that database, but also looking to see if they want to somehow dig into some of those best practices and if there's anything out there that we hadn't thought of that we might want to bring into Kentucky. So that was the main work on Monday from that committee. And then on Tuesday, the Bold New Future committee met, and this is the one that Brooke is a part of. So she was in this meeting. Caleb Bates is the chair of that committee, and Caleb is actually he's getting ready to graduate from college and will be in grad school in the fall, I believe. So he's another one who has been a part of our student advisory committee in the past and is also working at the Department of Education as an intern in our communications department because that's what he's interested in doing upon graduation. So he shared with the team just kind of an overview of what is in the grant and some of those deliverables that pertain to the work of this committee. They also, meeting then transitioned into a discussion of the United We Learn report. So really they were looking a lot at, and Brooke, feel free to jump in if you want to add anything since you were in this one, but they really kind of were interested in how did we get to these 3 big ideas from the 10 themes that originated in the report that came out from the coalition. So the United We Learn Coalition had 10 things that really were distilled from all of that data that we had. So they had a lot of discussion around that and how to kind of picture that or figure out how all of the work fits together. I will say that at the department level, we're not so much concerned about how the 10 got to 3, but we are concerned about this big picture of what is all of the work that is going on. How does it relate to United We Learn and who's responsible for what? So we are in the process of putting together what we're calling the big picture of United We Learn. I don't know that it's going to answer the question specifically. Well, it's not going to answer the question specifically about how we went from 10 to 3. Honestly, I would say that was the commissioner's call because the 10 things that were in that report were really big things. And we can't tackle everything that was in there at once. So it was his idea to kind of look at that and say, okay, what can we do? What are the best first steps for us to take? And that became the big 3 ideas and frankly, the vision of education in Kentucky that we're moving forward with. Anything you want to add to that, Brooke?
No, I'm trying to hunt the executive summary, so I'll put that into the box so you guys can see what those 10 are. I think they're really important for us as a council to know the 10 that came out. And I agree with Karen, and it's too hard to keep your mind around 10 things. It's just too many to try to keep track of. But they're very specific. And so I think that's what we're trying to juggle as a subcommittee is how do you not lose those specific calls to action?
Yeah, agreed. All right, now move on then to accelerating innovation. That was last night's meeting, and Kathy Stovall is the chair for this committee. She is an educator. She started off looking at their charter. So I think I started off saying that each of them put together a charter. They had not approved their charter yet, so they did that last night through a unanimous vote. They wanted to look at, so they are very keenly focused on assessments right now. They wanted to know, actually they had a task kind of in between their meetings where they were each assigned to go out and look at different models for assessments and then bring that back to the committee. So they went through some of that. They looked at some of the things that are currently going on in Kentucky, and then also what's going on outside of Kentucky. And then they want, and I have to admit, I was only in the first half of this meeting, so I am kind of reading from someone else's notes here. But yeah, so they are making sure that what they move forward with and what was in the original report is reflected on how they come up with our new assessment and accountability model moving forward. They also talked about what we call the innovative habits, and this is something that we are very focused on within the department, and that is making sure that everything we do, we think about inclusion, empathy, co-creation, and reciprocity. And so they had a discussion about that and making sure that those 4 habits are included in their work as they move forward as well. And so the next steps are to convene in April. So April 25th and 26th is when we will come together in Shelbyville. You can go to the next slide. And we have a monthly newsletter that's going out. So if you haven't received that and would like to, you can get we can get you on a mailing list for that. If somebody wants to get names to me, I can make sure that we get you on that distribution list. There's like a sign up. I don't know how you get to it, so I'd have to ask, but you can like sign up for any newsletters that come out from KDE, and this is one of them. So that's the list that we're using to send this out. We do have a web page that'll take you to some general information about United We Learn, and then we have sub pages that focus on each one of the standing committees. So if you're really interested and have a lot of time on your hands, you can go and watch all of those meetings because we do record them and they are posted out there. They're also webcast live when the meetings are happening. So you can get as involved as you want by watching all of those. Let's see, and then, oh yeah, Kathy Stovall is going to be presenting to the Board of Education. So she's going to be talking about what her committee, the accelerating innovation, especially through assessments. She's going to be talking about that work to the board on April 12th. And it's our intention to bring light to all of this work to the board on a very regular basis. So I'm kind of lining up each of the chairs to do presentations to the board during every one of our board meetings. So this work is very much alive. The board is very interested in how things are moving and making sure that this effort is truly going to make a change in Kentucky. We've heard from enough students, enough teachers that a change is needed. And like Brooke said, if you look at those 10 themes that came out of the report, they're very specific about what they want to change. And so this is a starting point for us. This is work that is funded over the next 4 years. And at the end of that 4 years is when recommendations will be coming forward. So there's not going to be an immediate change. You're not going to see, oh no, all of a sudden everything's going to be wonderful. It's just, you know how it is in education. Things just don't move that quickly. But at least, I think for what I would consider the first time, I've been here for 18 years, and this is the first time where it's truly this huge effort that I think is being shared across Kentucky for people getting excited. I'm seeing a lot of excitement outside of the department for people wanting to be involved in this, wanting to make a change, and that's the direction that we're moving in. So happy to take any questions.
I'll just, I'm a chat box poster. we did have the guiding question for Karen's is, how can you all as Family Partnership Council members help share the work? And as a council as a whole, and then kind of each of these 3 subcommittees, that's sort of the call to action for our group right now. And then I'd kind of put the other spin on it too, is if you have strong feelings or ideas on any of these kind of 3 buckets of the work or into those specific 10, that is a great way for our group to connect with another group with kind of a similar mission and 70 people strong in 4 years of funding. So if you have something that you're looking through here and you just have an idea or an example in practice where you feel like it's already being done, send those our way and we'll make sure it gets to the chairs of those subcommittees.
Absolutely.
I think someone unmuted. Yeah, go.
I just want, a couple of things. First, I'm just kind of wondering, especially with the work that's being done, and that's Coco, so she's going to let you know she's here too. Sorry, is in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I see where that could work. That work can work hand in hand and be so beneficial. So I'm wondering are you all working closely with both groups so that it and the work that's being done? And also, too, one of the things, and I'm sure in all 3, you would be looking at, I guess, as a committee bringing forward, just making sure in all 3 of those things, taking into consideration special populations in all 3 of those areas is going to be, I think, critical. And you all have always been very intentional, making sure that no one is left out. But I think it would be important to make sure that we really are intentional with special populations throughout all 3.
Yes, I hear you. So to answer the first part of your question, yes, we were very intentional and did work with our division of DEIB. And when we formed the coalition, so we took a very formulated, I don't know how else to say that, approach to who we were inviting in. And even with the applications that went out, before we made any final decisions about who was on there, we really looked to make sure that, we had a very diverse group, both geographically, as far as race goes, as far as ability goes. We took a really hard look at that, which is why we have 75 people. We had intended to have a group of about 60, which is what our coalition was, and we felt that was manageable to have 60 people in the group. But we knew that we needed some of those other diverse voices. And so we continued to add people in to make sure that we weren't leaving out anyone who had a unique perspective. And that was one of the questions we asked on the application, was what unique perspective do you bring? And so we put a lot of weight on that to make sure that all those groups were represented. And then, did I answer all your questions, or am I missing one?
It was just throughout all 3, just the input, making sure that special populations are considered within each of the 3.
Yes. And because of the diverse people that we have on each of those committees, I feel very confident that that's going to happen.
Maybe just one more comment or question from the group. Has anyone heard about this? I know we presented on this in one of our previous council meetings when Karen was seeking applications for the council. So Karen, I just appreciate that you've had our council kind of part of this the whole time. That's awesome. And so I hope you guys feel like you're kind of tuned in to what's happening with this United We Learn Council. And is anybody hearing about this work other than through our council?
That's a good question. I'd love to know that. All right. Well, if you're not, we'll work on making sure that we are broadening our communications. I'll take that as a signal that we need to do a little bit more there.
You know, it's a quiet group. So there may be folks out there just.
Well, and if you're interested, again, let me know. We'll get you signed up for that newsletter so you can keep on top of it.
I think we discussed that last time, didn't we, about getting things like this out to more of the community, more of the parents, because as a parent and as a longstanding council member and sitting on the board for KASC, I hear about it through this, but I don't hear about it through the schools.
Okay. Okay, that gives me something to think about. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Lauren. Well, thank you for presenting to us today, Karen. And if I get any
My
feedback
pleasure.
or questions, I will absolutely pass them your way.
Appreciate that.
All right. I think next up is Mickey Ray with Home Reading Guidance.
Thank you, Brooke. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Very happy to be joining you today. My name again is Mickey Ray. I serve as the Chief Academic Officer in the Office of Teaching and Learning. And I'm joined today by Christy Biggerstaff. And Christy came to the KDE back in July from Monroe County, and she now serves as our Director of Early Literacy. And so we're here today, and we have a guided question for you that's related to resources. So what resources are needed to best support families with reading at home? And this all has come about initially because of a policy change. So in the 2022 session, the Read to Succeed Act, it was numbered Senate Bill 9, it was passed by the General Assembly, and a portion of that legislation requires the KDE to provide supports to local schools and districts around reading at home plans. And so Christy's going to walk through that much more specifically with you, but I want you to be aware of where this resource lives in light of our other resources for families and caregivers. So on KY Standards, it's kystandards.org. There's a page specifically for standards, family guides, and resources, and I'm going to pop that link into the chat just so you can see where this resource is housed. And within that, we do have supports around the standards for reading and writing, mathematics, social studies, and science. So all of those live there. And we often have questions from families and teachers who are wanting to better support families around what the standards require at each grade level. But further into the page, we have now added a literacy checklist that's meant to be utilized by families. This document, it's actually an educator facing document, but we do have it here for the support and educational relationship building, communication services for families that will be interacting with school leaders within these buildings. And so it lives here, but I want us to think about what additional supports would be needed. And Christy's going to talk more specifically about what we have coming as a follow-up to this document, but just really ask for your thoughtfulness and your thinking around what's currently being provided and any gaps that may exist within this resource or future resources. And so I know in settings like this, Brooke, to your earlier point, sometimes it's to be put on the spot is challenging. So I would ask, as you have time to dig into the document and really think about what guidance you could provide to us in better supporting families around literacy specifically. So Christy, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of allow people to engage more directly with that resource.
And I'm going to back up just a little bit and kind of tell you why this resource kind of come to fruition with Senate Bill 9, as Mickey stated. And it gets a little technical, and I don't want to get too technical here, but I do want you to understand kind of the background and why this has come about and what, as Mickey said, we've got coming in the future. So with Senate Bill 9, the superintendents were charged to choose a reliable and valid universal screener and diagnostic. And that universal screener is specifically for literacy, and that kind of denotes if there is an issue with the child's reading ability within schools. And then the diagnostic assessment kind of delves deeper into sub-skills within literacy to kind of pinpoint specific issues within the foundation and where gaps are, so the teachers can intervene effectively and really target instruction for those gaps. So when a child is kind of been targeted to be at risk, then that kind of denotes a reading improvement plan. And the reading improvement plan comes to fruition and kind of gives out this document inside the plan. So we've kind of compiled a list of universal screeners, and we have that on our website. The approved list, we wanted to make sure, as the law stated, that they were reliable and valid. And then the reading improvement team kind of comes together to create a reading improvement plan to really hone in on those specific skills and help that child be proficient in reading. And the reading improvement team, you might be interested to know that it states that they're on this team as a parent and guardian, the regular education teacher of the child, a person that's very knowledgeable about the reading standards and curriculum within a school. And then if that child has any special services, speech services and whatnot, then they're included on the team too. So the reading improvement plan itself that's developed with that team has intervention and evidence-based strategies on there. It ensures that they progress monitor to make sure that child is making improvements. And then we come to the reading or read at home plan. So that read at home plan is kind of where we focus this guidance, because we know that parents are valuable and vital partners in a child's education, and they want to be involved and they want to help their children be successful. So I'm going to try to share my screen because I want you, Mickey's put the document, I think, in the chat, but I want to see if I can share my screen because I want you to see the actual document.
And Christy, as you're sharing that, I did put it into the chat, but again, if someone is viewing online, you would go to kystandards.org, you would select the standards family page, and it's located on that page. And this was completed in partnership with the Kentucky Collaborative for Families and Schools. So they were critical for us in building out the research basis, the best practices around relationship building and communication between schools and families. So this would not have been completed without their support. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that today.
Absolutely. And as Mickey said, this is an administrator facing document. So we wanted to give them really rich best practices that they could put within their schools to try to build those strong relationships with our parents, because as I said, they are vital to the success of our students. So as you can see the document there on the screen, I'm not going to scroll all the way through because I fear that if I start scrolling, I will make you sick as I scroll. But I do want you to know some of the components of this document. And it basically gives administrators some quick tips on how to enact relationships between our educational partners and our family partners with a student. And, gives them tips like dedicating time for teachers to make those contacts and get to know families. We know relationship building is very important. Setting expectations for responding to parent messages, offering communications that are clear and short and concise, the use of communication apps to kind of help facilitate that communication even better. It talks about building relationships within the different roles so that families partnerships parents can help build the reading at home with a lot of guidance from teachers, because we know our parents are not educators and they will need help and guidance on how to help their children at home. And we know that when educators make families feel invited and, they are more connected to the classroom and will be a more vital partner. We want to create a climate where it uplifts the teacher and helps create and foster those family relationships. And then 2, I'm going to scroll very slowly down to this part. It talks about the different roles that we have in the education of the child and how families really need to be a part of that communication. They need to know like what interventions are happening with literacy, what specific activities can be done to bolster their child's literacy foundation. And it talks about the educator's role and, of course, the administrator's role within that. And then it lists out some critical attributes linked to literacy. And we know that, we want to be culturally responsive. We want our families to be co-creators in their child's educational career. We know that it must be built on trust and that we need to have a welcoming environment. We want to make sure that our parents are welcomed into our schools and welcome to be a part of their child's education. And then the last part of the document talks about the critical attributes linked to literacy. We want our parents to feel comfortable interacting with their children and the activities that we give them and help to encourage them to use are doable. And we want to make sure that all the resources that we give them are clear and concise. So that is kind of the document in a nutshell. Again, it's for our administrators to help build those relationships and help encourage teachers to build those relationships with our parents. Something that I'm very excited about that's coming, and I'm going to unshare my screen now. That we are currently working on that I feel like you will be very interested in, as it's linked to the document that I just shared, is we are creating a read at home plan for the family. So this will be a parent facing document that our teachers can go to our website and our families can go to our website and download. And it talks about the critical components of literacy. So if your child is identified in a reading improvement plan for having gaps, let's just pretend it's a phonemic awareness gap, then we're going to have a document that teachers can print off or that parents can print off, and they can have very simple activities that don't require a lot of resources or doesn't require any money to implement, and they can do those activities with their children at home and help build those literacy foundations and ensure that they are proficient readers. So we're working on that document. We hope to have that posted by May, so everybody will know that it's there, because the full implementation of the reading improvement plans and the reading improvement team will happen in the 23-24 school year. And again, this all kind of come about with the Senate Bill 9 and the guidance that we're trying to create and support to help our children be proficient readers in Kentucky. So I will stop there. I'm sure you might have questions, and we welcome those. So if you can think of any questions that you might have about that document that I shared with the Collaborative for Family and Schools, or the upcoming documents and resources that we might have.
I have a question. Does that guidance only go to a family if their student is struggling with reading?
Well, no, I mean, we hope to post that on the website so anybody can access that. But it's kind of geared toward helping our teachers have those resources available very easily so they can give to their parents. But that's going to be out there on the internet for anybody to access.
So that's the one thing I'll clarify. So the law requires that these reading improvement plans are in place K-3. So it would be, and the language says that the local district should provide read at home plan guidance to parents. So for us, the local district may develop something else. They may have their own resources that they want to share, but we have it posted because we think there is value beyond K-3. This is something that is helpful for educators K-12 in building relationships with families and communicating around literacy. So it has greater value beyond the very narrow scope of the law. But I think the Read at Home plan supports the parent-facing document that will come. It does focus very specifically on the elementary grade band because of the requirements of the law. But that being said, we want to make sure, and that's part of how we need your help. We need to know who to get these resources to, like in the hands of people who can communicate their existence, their value, and their purpose so that more parents and families will have access to these supports for the benefit of their child and their success at school within reading.
Just a thought, because I was, just telling Karen about the United We Learn information not getting to parents. I would also say the same to you, is really be thinking about how to get it in the hands of parents even before school. And I know for me, individually with my children, I was a big participator in all the activities and programs that the local libraries provided.
Yes,
and you might want to get this guidance to the children's programs at local libraries, especially in rural communities. I mean, we went to the library often when mine were as young as 6 months. So, and they have excellent programs for our county. And if you already start having that conversation with parents before their children are ever even in kindergarten, I feel like that would be very helpful, because you are reading at home before school starts, or you should be. And if you're not, maybe we should be putting more importance on this is what you should be doing to get your kid ready for school.
I think that's a wonderful idea. And I think we have within the KDE, James Allen, who is the liaison for libraries and media centers across the state. So that has really inspired me. And again, it's something that should be obvious, but when we just think about, thinking about doctors' offices potentially as well, and just having places where these resources can live for families, even if they aren't currently engaging with the school system, I think would be very wise. I appreciate that recommendation. I
would also say preschools within the community should have that guidance as well. Especially in my community, the majority of the people I knew, we sent our children to private preschools because that was what was offered more readily. So,
well, and daycares too. Many families access, the YMCA's, their summer programs, and one of the things that I did want to ask too. So, would the plans be used as part of a student's, the multi-tiered system supports that might be in place for them, for students who are struggling with reading? Okay. And then also because for our families, many of our families don't have access to books to read to their children. And that is the largest barrier, that it's not that our families don't want to read with their children. They may not have access to it. So ensuring not only that we come up with a plan, but they have what they need to be able to do it and be successful.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, we know that there has been much work done with the Imagination Library and that partnership there, but Christy and I and Brooke and I have actually talked about this as well, but in states like Tennessee, they have offered free decodable text for kindergarten through second grade. And so it's something that parents can go online to their Department of Education and in essence request or make their order, but it's free for families to receive those books. So we're looking for partners. We're really trying to think about how we can provide supports, not only for the learning activities, but also for additional access to those decodables.
Elizabeth had her hand up for a minute.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, you're
No,
fine. This is great.
Okay. I was patiently waiting. I knew you would get to me.
Thank you.
I don't know if this happens in every county, but when my kids were younger, the Family Resource Center in their school district hosted a family reading night very regularly. And in that activity, they gave, it was completely free. My kids got tons and tons of books through that Family Resource Center. And so I think that if you all collaborated with the Family Resource Centers throughout the state in the different school districts, it would be a great way to get the word out about what you have online, because obviously that always attracted a large crowd because, again, everything was free. They always had activities. It's always fun. There was always a food component. And it had a lot of participation because they knew, the kids would walk away with free books. And so that's another avenue I think you would really benefit from collaborating with to really get the word out about it. In the county that we used to live in when my kids were little in Hopkins County, the YMCA there, I know that's been mentioned, but they actually have on-site after-school care locations. I don't know if they have that in other counties, but reaching out to YMCAs across the state, almost all have an after-school program. Another great way to reach a whole lot of people with the free resources you have. I love that you have it online. I love that if I wanted to today, you would be able to click on that and have access to it, because some kids may not be targeted as needing that intervention, but some parents might just like to reinforce that too. So I think all parents knowing about that, I think it could be a valuable resource across the entire student body, not just for kids that are identified as having a problem. So I really appreciate your work.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you to the Kentucky Collaborative for Families in Schools as well, because again, that document, they led the work on that. And so just grateful that we have that, are committed to doing more as we move forward. And I know, Christy, I have taken down all of these recommendations, just very helpful today.
I did have someone who's watching on the online channel wanting to know about multiple languages.
Yes.
We do plan to give that guidance in different languages. We know that is a need, and that is the goal.
And I think we're even thinking about how we could translate the existing guidance document into Spanish. And so those conversations are happening as well, but we don't have that online just yet.
Well, as you guys create the family-facing materials, I would love for you to send them my way, and I can get them out to the group, and so we can just kind of keep co-designing and co-building with you all. That would be awesome.
And would love that. So yes, we will keep you up to date on when that's ready to roll. And again, if more things come to you, even after this item has moved on in the agenda, please reach out to Brooke or to myself and Christy. Like we need partners. We want partners, and we want to make sure that we're doing our best to serve families across the Commonwealth. So grateful for any feedback that you may have.
Awesome. And I think a good place to start, you guys, would just be in your own experiences as family. What happened in your own kids' education that was helpful? So was it a decodable? Was it, a bookmark that told you ideas for how to read to your kid? Was like, what came to you through your own journey as a parent that was helpful? And kind of collecting some of those best ideas might get us out of the box on some of the materials we create for families too. Or what do you wish you had? Kind of thinking about it either way. Anything else, guys? This is a good one. All right. Well, thank you so much, Christy and Mickey,
Thank
for
you.
No
bringing
problem.
this to our group. And we appreciate being included as you guys go. And hopefully I'll get some cool ideas headed your way.
Thank
Love
you.
that. Thank you. Thanks to
Mhm.
all.
Thank you. Okay. Shasta, you're up next.
All righty, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes? Okay. So thank you all so much for inviting me to be here and give me an opportunity to kind of share with you guys. I know several members and teammates here. So again, just kind of thank you all. And to those of you who don't know me, I did want to give you just a little bit of background. I sort of live and work over in the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. And so if I say OSEAL, because inevitably I will, I'm not talking about the little like shiny mammals. I'm talking about my office. So it's OSEAL, Office of Special Education and Early Learning. We have several divisions, and I work in the division of IDEA implementation and preschool. And my role is an exceptional child consultant. I am juggling a couple of different things right now. I just took over the state transformation specialist lead work. Also do English learners with disabilities, and I also work within family school partnerships. So lots of awesome things, and all of these things have special places in my heart. I'm also a parent. I have 2 kiddos, and one of my kiddos does have a disability. You can go ahead to the next slide. It's really just sort of this like essential question, is how does OSEAL partner with families and schools? And so I'm going to give you guys like just high level kind of overview, but please do not hesitate to jump in and ask those questions. And Brooke, my chat is like, I don't know, it's kind of like struggling a little bit. So if something comes up, just let me know. Mine's not syncing quickly, so just let me know. Go ahead. So I was like, how there's so many things that we do. So this is sort of like 3 big buckets here. And one of those is that we partner with our districts. We also partner with families, and then we also partner with community agencies and do some interagency work. And that's sort of like how we get at improving outcomes for children with disabilities. Next slide. So thinking about like our district partnerships, one of the ways that we partner with districts is through just direct technical assistance, right? So if a director, if a teacher, if a para educator, if a transportation specialist, if any of those people have questions, they can just call us directly. We have lots of really great consultants here with, lots of great experiences who can help answer those questions or at least point people in the right direction to find those answers. We also partner with our directors of special education. So if I say DOSE, that's what I'm talking about. We have monthly meetings with them and of course partner with them really closely. We go to lots of different conferences. We try everywhere our special education teachers are. We try to be there too. So, as an example, would be the Kentucky Council for Exceptional Children. And at the last Kentucky Council for Exceptional Children back in November, Rhonda from Kentucky Spin and myself, we partnered to do a presentation on family school partnerships within special education. And then we also at the DOSE Institute, which is where we just bring our directors and our assistant directors together, and we just kind of love on them and give them some really good just like guidance and resources and tools and networking and all those kind of things. And I also presented on family school partnerships within special education there as well. We have lots of guidance documents, so many guidance documents that we provide, and we try to have those in based on sort of what needs are. We try to be responsive to what's happening federally, what's happening in the state, but then also like, well, wow, we've gotten a lot of questions about this from our district, so we should probably put out some sort of information around that. We have webinars, and of course, we have web resources. And some of those on our instructional resources page, there's a section specific to family engagement. And so just different tools that districts can use to grow their family engagement and grow their family partnerships. And of course, there's always our latest OSEAL communications and resources, which is where you can kind of go to get like the latest news in the Office of Special Education. All right, next slide. So our community and interagency partnerships, our technical assistance network, oh my gosh, there's so many great brains within this community. And we have so many great partnerships with our institutes for higher ed, several universities and colleges. Of course, we adore our partnership with the Kentucky Special Parent Involvement Network, or Kentucky SPIN. You guys know Rhonda. She and I, we talk a lot. I don't know how we're not sick of each other yet. The Kentucky Post School Outcomes Center, the Kentucky Autism Training Center, and UK, they're a Human Development Institute, are again just essential partners for us. There are so many more. And Brooke, do you guys usually send out these PowerPoints sort of afterwards, or provide these in notes afterwards?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, perfect. So when I send this out, or when we get this out to you guys, all of these things are links. You can go and check those out. We also have a state advisory panel for exceptional children, and there are lots of great members on that. But one of my most favorite things about this council is that we have lots of parents. There is a really strong parent voice on this council, which is wonderful. So, parents of children with disabilities are, they are always a part of that conversation. I also like to brag on our Special Olympics Kentucky, or our Unified Champion Schools program. Again, just really lots of great things, to working with schools to help build inclusion, and making sure that our students with disabilities have, opportunities to just be a part of the school. Again, really cool things that they're doing. And then we also partner with our Kentucky Governor's Office for Early Childhood. And I don't live over in preschool, so I can't talk about that one a whole lot. But I do know that we have good standing partnerships with the GOC. We also have our regional partnerships. We have two regional partnerships that are just very near and dear to us. We just could not survive without them. And one of those are our SERTACs, our Special Education Regional Technical Assistance Centers. We have 9 regions across the state, and these are within their region, they'll support people within maybe anywhere from 2 to 10 districts. And they do a lot of training around special education topics. A lot of these 4 or 5 day trainings, these throughout the year trainings around things like specially designed instruction and IEP development, those sorts of things. They really are essential partners in doing that work. And then we also have our early childhood regional training centers, or RTCs, and we have 5 of those across the state. And again, just essential partners in working, directly with teachers and special education staff and preschool staff to say, this is what a good IEP looks like, and this is how we make sure that we include parents in that IEP process, that sort of thing. Next.
I was just going to pause right here. So for these regional training centers, this is for staff. So do any of these trainings happen for families, or are family leaders ever kind of included in some of this training work?
That's a really good question. I think that primarily, just based on my understanding, right? So if you go to their list of offerings, they're primarily targeted to teachers and staff, making sure that teachers and staff, are able to provide special education services. I don't know of any that are doing anything directly to parents and families at this time.
That might be a way our council, so on this council, we have a parent rep from each region. So that might be an interesting idea, is to connect each of you to your regional training centers for just a connection with some of that PD that's happening through KDE.
It's a great idea.
And this is the special education co-ops.
Yeah, so we do. So
and
go ahead, Rhonda. Sorry, I cut you off.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Nope, I'm done.
No, I was just going to tell you, a lot of them have regionally, the special ed co-ops, done trainings for families. And actually, they've been the presenters on many of our webinars to get that information to families. Also, too, through COVID, especially Northern Kentucky Special Education Cooperative developed and had a lot of tools that are online, you can even still access now, that helped families at home work with their child as they were on remote learning. So there has been some of that done for families as well through the co-ops.
Thank you, Ron. I'm so glad you said that because I think about our partnership a lot, but you're right. I know that a lot of our consultants and our RTCs from our Surtax and things have partnered with you guys to do some of your webinars and trainings. I totally forgot about that. Thank you for remembering. All right, next slide. And then our family partnerships. So again, our direct technical assistance is really important. We get a ton of calls from directly from families on lots of different topics, right? Sometimes it's families just looking for resources. Sometimes it's families who are like, I have this question, I'm not really sure, where do I go and who do I talk to within the district? And so that we get those sorts of questions, and we provide, them with direct technical assistance. So we say, what is your unique question, your individualized question? Then we provide those supports to sort of go with that, and we always encourage them to work in partnership with their districts. We also do conferences with our TA network partners. So again, Rhoda, I just talked about how she and I had partnered together on several different things, but there are several of our TA partners who do conferences and sessions and special webinars specifically to parents and families, and say, hey, could you come and talk to us or talk to our families about special education? And we love to do that. We have some guidance via our web pages. So parent and family resources, parent and family rights in our toolbox. And so what we did with these web pages was essentially we just kind of like said, okay, what are our most frequently asked questions that we hear from families? And we divided those up. We put those onto one of these pages, and we provided not only an answer to that question, but also gave lots of resources. Several of those resources are in different languages, just so that families can kind of know, like, oh, what like there's ones like, what does all these acronyms mean, or what is special education? There's on our parent and family rights page, and it talks about things like the ARC process and that sort of information. So I really encourage you guys to go there. And check that out. And on our parent and family toolbox, there are, there are advocacy organizations. We, also partner with some, parent advocates, and we get questions from them as well. And that's part of that toolbox. If a parent is saying, I don't, I would like someone to go with me to an ARC meeting, we provide them with information to different advocates across the state. And like I had mentioned already, we do lots of webinars with our TA partners, like Kentucky Spin. And then indicator 8. So this is kind of a big one for me. So you care to go ahead and move on, Megan? I want to talk a little bit more about that. And that's part of like this whole like current news. If you ask me what's super important right now, I would say this. Oh, I'm sorry, Megan, can you go back one? Sorry, maybe two. Right there. Yes, that one. So we have part of our accountability to the Federal Office of Special Education is our SPPAPR, which our State Performance Plan Annual Performance Report. And like I said, basically in a nutshell, that's how we are accountable to the Office of Special Education programs at the federal level. We have 17 indicators, right? 17 things that we got to do. And one of those is indicator 8, which is parent engagement. Go ahead, Megan. And so a little bit about Indicator 8. I'm one of the co-leads on Indicator 8, so it's obviously like my favorite one. But it's an annual survey, and it is for all parents of students with IEPs. So, and that's ages 3 to 21. So if your kiddo has an IEP between the ages of 3 and 21, so preschool, to high school, right? It's for you, and that it asks very specific questions about just how families are feeling about their partnerships with their school. The parent letter, we have like a QR code, and we have links that are provided by the director. So we give this information in a letter to our directors of special education, and their directors, they sort of decide based on how structures are within their district, how that would go. Like, oh, we're going to make sure I'm going to do it on an email blast, or I'm going to do a phone call, or I'm going to give it to the child's case manager, and they're going to pass it along. So different directors do different things in different ways. And one of the things I'm really excited about is, is that how much we've grown in our translations. And so approximately about 4.5% of our students with IEPs are also English learners. And I told you guys earlier, another piece of my heart is English learners with disabilities. And so we are growing that the languages that we have available every year. We now have it available in English, Spanish, Arabic, Swahili, Somali, and Amish. And we're already thinking about which two we're going to add next year. Go ahead. So some of the questions that are on this survey, the first one we use for federal reporting. So that's the one that we like directly report those numbers on to the Office of Special Education, the federal level, is, does the school involve you in a meaningful way to improve services and results for your child? Sort of a yes, no question. But then we go into some other questions that have more options, more open-ended, those sorts of things. Questions around like, how well do you understand the IEP process? What are the strengths of your school? What are the areas of growth for your school? We utilize that data here at the state to sort of help us make decisions, again, around what sorts of, technical assistance we provide to our districts and our regions. And then our districts also have access to that data where they can look at their results, broken down by different categories and say, oh, wow, it seems like our parents really, so this was a strength of us. So let's keep doing this thing. And then this is the area for growth for us. So this is a space that when we think about, engaging our families in our district, what we want to do to improve. Next slide. And that survey is now open. So if you've not had if you are a parent of a child in IEP and you have not had an opportunity to go there yet, I encourage you to do so. You can go use that link directly, or you can just scan that QR code and it'll take you right there. You can choose the language, your heart language, the one that works best for you, and complete that survey. Next slide. Just some other news, some other big things that are going on. Everybody loves monitoring. Everybody loves to be monitored by the people that give them money. We especially love it. And so we're about to go into that. We have something that's called DMS 2.0, or Differentiated Monitoring and Support, which is the Office of Special Education. At the federal level, will be monitoring Kentucky's general supervision system, and that's going to start in June. We also have the Early Childhood Institute coming up around April 19th, and the Kentucky Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Languages, or TESOL. That conference is coming up as well on March 24th and 25th. And at that conference, I will be talking to EL leaders within the world of English learners, talking about sort of like policies and rights that impact English learners. And a big part of that conversation is going to be around the rights of parents within English learners with disabilities, right? Like we just keep narrowing that down. Next slide. Are there any questions? I'm notorious for talking too fast, so I am so sorry. Are there any questions? Or feedback? You guys were giving just awesome, great feedback earlier. So just got something to share.
Maybe just something to share related to special education programming and the way it works in your community. That's just good feedback for Shasta to take back to her team. Has anybody worked with an IEP or 504 in your school before? Anybody's had that experience with their kiddo before? All right. Well, thank you so much, Shasta, for joining us. Yeah, go ahead, Rhonda.
I was trying for a moment to be quiet because y'all know I talk and talk and talk. They're going to kick me out one day. But I just wanted to say we are very fortunate in Kentucky with OSL, because I don't know if people realize that what we received, the guidance, being very intentional, that this doesn't happen in other states. And I don't know if people know that. You know, I know we all are looking for ways we can improve and be better than we were yesterday. But I don't know that people realize how fortunate we are with the work that KDE has done and continues to do in regards to special education, because other states do not have that. And so especially, you know, going through COVID and everything. So we are very fortunate and grateful. And Shasta can't get rid of me.
Thank you so much, Shasta, for giving us that update. That's an area that folks really indicated some interest with special education. So I hope you all got some good stuff. And if you have anything that you want to kind of advocate for the families that you're representing here today, please send that my way or send it directly to Shasta. Areas where you see some need for improvement or clarity for families, or resources you wish were out there you can't find, or families that you're working with can't find.
Thank you all.
Great. And I'm actually going to hold on this. Megan, if you don't mind, just take us to where we can all see each other's faces. I think maybe just no screen share, maybe. And get our little Brady Bunch boxes up here. All right, so we've got 10 minutes left of our quarterly meeting. So in these last 10 minutes, I just want to hand it over to you all. We've heard a great update from Dr. Glass about the bills that are going through right now that affect Kentucky education system. And so I'm hoping you guys feel updated and we're able to get your questions answered. United We Learn, we kind of know what's going on with that new initiative, which really pairs well with this council's purpose of family and community engagement, and how that influences what our hopes are for Kentucky education system. We learned about the reading at home guidance. So be thinking about ideas you might have, recommendations for Mickey and Christy related to what worked for you as a parent, or what do you wish you would have had as a parent, so we can make sure that gets in there. And then Shasta's presentation on special education. So what does KDE offer schools and families related to special education? So hoping you feel informed about that. And anything that you want to pass along, I can do that for you, or you can reach out directly to Shasta. So I thought it would be good just to kind of hear what's happening in each of your neck of the woods, just what you're seeing as kind of the top conversations and for families in your areas. So does anybody want to go first? Just kind of what area you're representing and what you're really hearing families talk about right now.
I'll go.
Great, thanks, Lauren.
I'm from Woodford County, so Central Kentucky. Just on a personal note, our varsity basketball team has made it to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 1986. Go Yellow Jackets! Woohoo! A lot of what I've been hearing lately is about communication, clear, concise communication to families. Also, you hear a lot of parents discouraged about, is my child getting a good education right now? Has there been such a slide since 2020 that it's really in the tanker? And a lot of them are discouraged, saying things like, school's not what it used to be, our kids aren't being challenged, our kids aren't getting the education that we did as kids. And it's a concern. You know, it might seem small, but a lot of our kids right now don't know how to read or write in cursive, and just do simple things like that. And it's things that we were taught and never thought twice about. And now you look at your own kids or your own community in your own district and go, There's a lot of things that we don't do now that we did then. But I hear that a lot. I can't hear you.
Thank you, Lauren. We've got about 7 minutes left, but I do want give folks an opportunity. Someone else want to give a little update just on families in your area? Rhonda, what about families you're serving through Kentucky Spin? What's
I
really
wanted to
resonating
wait
with
so I could.
those folks?
I wanted to wait to make sure if someone else wanted to speak that, you know, I've always got something. Is that especially in regards, it's still constantly in regards to behavior and receiving the supports and services that are needed, and really getting to the source of the issue and the social emotional toll that everything has taken on our children. Again, to echo what Lauren had said about, you know, the clear, concise communication too, families just being able to get a straight answer, and not having to send 100 emails to just get an answer to one question, and kind of get, not that it's intentional, but many times it's sort of like the runaround. Everything, no one's getting to the point to help us to get things resolved. And we know as families, every day that goes by is a day that we need those answers so we can help our children. And it's not just on minor things, it's huge. And especially, you know, I'm worried about our children and our families in regards to the social emotional toll of everything, even outside of being educationally successful right now, and how far they may be behind, but also too, like Lauren said, being challenged, being, you know, interacting. That may have been more than you wanted.
No,
but
that's great. Being challenged in the classroom, or families being challenged in communication? I didn't catch which way you meant that.
What I was saying there was being challenged in the classroom, but also to go back to parents getting straight answers and getting things resolved, because things are going on for like months upon months, and we can't help our children if we can't get the answers and know how to support them or get things addressed. And so what is happening then is a ripple effect to where we're not addressing things, it's coming out in bad behaviors. And now we've got charges filed on our child. And had we addressed it up front, we wouldn't be heading down that wrong avenue.
Awesome. Thank you. Mona and Jennifer, I can see your pictures, so that puts you in the hot seat. Just what are you hearing from families that you're representing? Good or bad? It can be good.
Ready for me?
Yes.
Okay. Just me personally, I have a 6th grader, and just seeing the need for more teachers in education and more substitutes. And my son got break detention last week, and it was essentially because there was, in my opinion, there wasn't enough hands helping the teacher, and what have you. You know, she wanted extreme silence or didn't get directions explained as he could understand them. So I'd let that go. I think it was a one-time consequence kind of thing. And didn't really know how to address it either, because I think the school's hands are tied. So right now I'm just experiencing a lot of frustration over that, and then how it's going to affect his education in general. I also have a junior, and I just feel like there's going to be a gap between their experiences at school, or there is a gap because of COVID and just different consequences, and it's really sad.
Feeling the impact of the teacher shortage on the parent side. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Mona. Elizabeth or Jennifer?
I represent a rural school district, and what I'm hearing mostly is just the adjustment to post-COVID changes, really, about when we went into COVID lockdown, and really more security lockdowns too, about how the schools have become less and less accessible on a daily basis to the teachers. Because we live in this rural area, a lot of our, I'm sorry, did I say teachers? I meant the parents. Parents, there was this culture where we live where parents were just so used to being able to just come in the mornings and say hello and drop their children off. And there was a little bit of a social minute or two in the mornings and in the afternoons, and that is gone. And being able to have that one-on-one connectivity daily. And so finding that new ability to connect and feel that connectivity on a daily basis with the teachers, and the new format post-COVID, post-security, post all of it, finding how we do that now and how we interface and still protect our children, and in this new way, just all of us finding our way is probably like the hot button topic amongst parents in conversation now. And not that anybody's necessarily resistant to it, it's just figuring out how we do it and how we interact with it now. And especially now with the advent of all the apps, all the different apps, and how teachers and parents communicate with Remind apps and this app and that app, and the Facebook and the Instagram, and you know what channel you're on and who's communicating where, and are you still connecting in, and are you talking to everybody, and just making sure you're still connected in with your teachers and that type of thing.
I'm in rural Western Kentucky, and right now everybody is also worried about the state basketball tournament. Our school's not in it, but that's been the hot button topic for the week. I'll be honest with you, I haven't heard much bad. We have had some bad weather the last couple of weeks, and that is very nerve-wracking. We were one of the counties affected by the tornado very deeply. Last year, we had a massive loss of houses, students, and so we're still recovering from some of the displacement that occurred because of that in Caldwell County. And so that's a kind of an ongoing issue. But for the most part, the school system has slowly but surely been returning to pre-COVID practices. We've had in-person parent-teacher conferences. We've had all regular school activities. And so I think the community has been encouraged by those things changing. I'm sure there'll be concerns somewhere, but recently anyway, I haven't really heard much.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for that update. We are 1 minute over, which I'm sure I'm not supposed to do that. Our future meetings will be June 8th and September 7th. And you'll get those invites from Leslie and Megan. And as you guys get kind of follow-up links and things, I just encourage you maybe just to block off an hour or so on your calendar, or 30 minutes here or there, and just give some dedicated time to looking over all of that and getting back feedback, questions, just anything. It's just really good for these different departments of KDE to hear back from our family voice. And so I just want to make sure that we're following up with something that represents geographically the different families across our state and the diverse populations that we each represent too. So just block off calendar time. I find that helps me at least to go through an email and provide some feedback. So I would really appreciate that. And you got till June, so.
What day in June is it?
June 8th.
8th. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think that's it. Leslie, do you officially take us out?
Oh, I was just going to say that it will be the same time on those days again too, right?
That's what I understand.
Yes, between 1 and 3.
Yeah, and they're always Zoom now. I don't think we go back to in person. We don't have that option even.
If, if 3 or 4 people want to come in, but now we're spread across the state, so it would just depend.
Okay,
That makes
okay.
Okay.
Oh, so we do have that option. Okay, well, thank you all so much. 2 hours is a long time, so I appreciate your time and your experiences, and so thank you all very much.